hand here is a rum and coke. It's a very simple drink, easy drink to make. Just throw a lemon or lime wedge in there, have 4 to 6 ounces of coke, and then 2 ounces of light rum. I use Captain Morgan. That's something that I personally like, and also, it's a delicious drink. It's an easy drink to make. But what do I like about it? It's simple. Not hard to make, not hard to get stuff for it, and it's pretty easy to consume. That's the opposite to describe of this NFL season so far. It has been, as the title of this video shows, a roller coaster on fire. I have a Bronco background, but we're going to discuss them a little bit, because they play in a part of this. But it's time to talk about why this NFL season has just been so freaking weird. Is going on, my city?
Woo! Baby! Yes! Yes! Cheers. In a game of butt cheeks, old middle school football team could scheme a better offense than Adam Gase.
Let's talk about this. This year has been nothing but absolute chaos for the NFL. I cannot tell you right now who I think the best team in the league is, at least on a consistent basis. It changes every 2 weeks. If you were to ask me right now who I think currently the best team in the NFL is, based on not really just their record, but how they're playing right now, I'd honestly say New England. And I know that they don't have the best record in the NFL, but they're playing the best. They're consistent on offense. They don't really get away from their identity too much. They know what their strength is, and they stick to it. They make sure that they don't get off script too much, and they know how to handle their rookie quarterback. And I'm going to make a video on these guys at the end of the season because, man, this rookie quarterback class has been pretty underwhelming. To New England's credit, they know how to handle Mac Jones. They know how to fit him into their system. They know how to guide him and make sure that they don't rush him. They know where to put him. They aren't forcing him into bad situations. They're one of the few teams I think I can get a full gauge on this season. Them, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, maybe Arizona. That's it. 4 teams I can properly gauge. Everyone else is weird. Weaknesses and strengths, yeah, they're there, but they flare up whenever they feel like. Sometimes you'll see a team come out with their strength and you're like, oh, this is what they're really good at. And then the next week that completely falls apart, but then their weakness flares up at the same time. So it's a double whammy. So like, for example, let's look at one of the teams that I'm struggling to gauge this year. We're going to jump right into this and I'll get into why this year has been so weird. And then we're going to address some of the weird stuff that's been happening recently at the end. So first team we're going to take a drink to. The first team I'm struggling to understand this year is Buffalo. Buffalo Bills are really, really weird. I am struggling to understand exactly what their strength is. I picked this team to win the AFC. I thought they'd go 13-4. I thought they were going to have a phenomenal season, and yet they're still floating in limbo right now. They're in the playoffs as we speak, but they look like they've gone back to 2019 form, not the 2020 Bills. The 19 Bills, as you remember, were pretty inconsistent as well. They struggled to score points on a consistent basis. Their defense was pretty up and down. I mean, yes, their defense played good in 2019. They've been up and down this year. They're at least getting more production from Josh Allen, but that's precisely their problem. If Josh Allen doesn't run well, then their run game is non-existent. If Allen doesn't throw for 400 yards, their offense can't do anything. Which, hate to break it to you, Bills, but even a great quarterback's going to have an off day every now and then. The primary goal for the Bills this year, upgrade that line, add to the defense, and get yourself a damn running back. A good one, too. Not Zach Moss, not Devin Singletary. Go get a real running back. Melvin Gordon will be on the market this year. And as a Denver fan, I want to bring back Melvin Gordon. But hey, Bills, there's a target for you. You want Melvin Gordon? He'll bring something nice to your offense. Go get Melvin Gordon. There's some guys in the draft this year. The Colts have an infinite amount of running backs, and one of them is going to be on the market. Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines. If they don't bring them back because Jonathan Taylor's turning into an absolute beast right now, go sign one of those guys. They'll be perfectly fine with Josh Allen. They're definitely an upgrade over what you got now. Bills have a big offseason coming up, and also they lost Tre'Davious White to an ACL tear, and they lost him late in the season, which hurts their defense greatly because he's definitely the best player on that defense. I don't know how to gauge the Bills right now. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're bad. They're the same team that hung 38 on Kansas City this year. On the road, by the way, on Sunday Night Football. Remember that game? They hung 38 on Kansas City. And then they put up only 6 points in a loss to Jacksonville, who just fired their head coach. What are you, Buffalo? I picked you to be to win the AFC. They look like anything but this year. Who knows? Maybe they're just a team that catches fire at the right time, but can't gauge them right now. Next team I'm struggling to gauge is my team, Denver. Some people say we know what Denver is. They're inconsistent, but I wouldn't quite say I don't know what they're inconsistent with because it's different every week. Sometimes their offense can play pretty well when Pat Shurmur finally decides, hey, we got 2 pretty good running backs. Running the ball is a good idea. Let's just let Javonte and Melvin pound it down their throats. Let's just let them do that. And they've done it pretty effectively. I went to that Lions game where they pretty much ran forever on the Lions, ran roughshod on them. And then I also watched that Bengal game where they refused to run the ball and pretty much decided just to throw all over the yard. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. Defensively, they're up and down as well. Sometimes they're getting tons of pressure, like last week where they were getting a lot to Joe Burrow. They're able to get a ton of pressure on Jared Goff. And then some weeks against Patrick Mahomes, he can just sit back there and he can have all day. I don't get with this team. Sometimes the secondary lockdown, sometimes they're not. I don't understand this team. Probably the worst part about this team is Pat Shurmur's game planning. He is really struggling when it comes to designing to his offensive strengths. So everyone's saying the Broncos should have drafted Fields or Jones. Let me ask you this, Broncos fans. Do you really trust Pat Shurmur to tailor a game plan for those quarterbacks at all? He couldn't do it for Drew Lock, and he had a full year with him. He couldn't do it with Teddy Bridgewater, and he wanted Teddy Bridgewater. He asked Peyton to trade for him, and he picked Teddy, so he couldn't do it for him either. He cannot design a game plan to fit to the quarterback's strengths. It doesn't matter who's behind center. They only run the ball if they're forced to. But other than that, Pat will go back to his air raid offense and just try to throw 1,000 times, and it doesn't work. Then out of nowhere, he decides to just start running the ball. He decides, hey, maybe we can use our great rookie running back and our Pro Bowl back right with him. We can use those guys. We can run some nice little screens with the tight ends and keep things going. I don't understand this team. They trade Von Miller, and the pass rush looks significantly improved. They're getting production from 7th round pick Jonathan Cooper. They trade a 6th round pick for Kenny Young. He's been a nice add. 3rd round pick Baron Browning's been a great inside linebacker for them, despite the fact they lost their 2 main guys to injury. I don't understand what this team is going to do. And now Teddy Bridgewater was knocked unconscious practically against the Bengals, and now Drew Lock is back in the role. And Locke looked promising against the Bengals, made some really nice throws, also made a boneheaded turnover, but I have no idea how to gauge this team. They're 7-7, and they need to win out to make the playoffs. Good chance Drew is probably starting the last 3 games. Here's the thing. If you were to tell me that Drew Lock would pull a miracle out of his ass, and Denver won 3 straight games and ended up making the playoffs, I would not be shocked in the slightest if they were to do that. You could tell me that the Broncos were to probably fall apart and lose out the next 3 games. I wouldn't be surprised by that either. This team could go either way for me. But I think that's how it's going to go. They'll either lose out and make the playoffs, they'll either win out and make the playoffs, or they'll lose out and get a better pick. That's what I'm seeing right now. I don't really see any other way for this team to go. They've been up and down all year. I'm going to just take a little toast here for Drew Lock. Like, dude, come on. Just give us something. Anything. Please. Next team I'm struggling to gauge this year is actually Kansas City. I'm struggling to understand what their strengths are too. They, at times, look really good on offense, except when they don't. Their defense has certainly played very much better. It's been a big reason why they're winning games. Their 40-point smack against the Raiders is proof of that. But the Chiefs also had some really inconsistency issues this year. Their offensive line is up and down. Their run game is kind of here or there. I think Kansas City, they're playing much better as of late, and thankfully they're playing better than they were back in October. If their October trends had continued, I think they'd be in the same boat as, say, the Raiders and the Broncos. They'd be clinging to the playoffs for dear life, and it would be the Chargers division to lose at that point. But Kansas City's come back to take it, and the West is still completely up for grabs at this point. Kansas City has by no means locked it down. The Chargers are right there on their tail, and if Denver manages to pull something out, they'll be back in, which means that Week 18 game will mean a lot against Kansas City. I have no idea what's going to happen at this point with Kansas City. I think they're going to win this division. I think that's set in stone, but are they good enough to make another run? I might want to hold off on that. Another team I've actually struggled to gauge quite a bit this year is probably the Rams. They are really weird to me. They started out the year red hot, and I thought Stafford was going to win MVP. I thought they looked like the best team in football. I thought, man, looks like we're heading to a Ram-Packer NFC Championship game, which I predicted back at the start of the year. I thought the Rams and the Packers were going to be the NFC Championship game. And now it looks like we're going back to Tampa Bay versus Green Bay. Not thinking the Rams can't still do it. They could very well still make a run. They're a very talented team, very good team. Stafford's playing really well. But their offense has had some consistency issues. Odell Beckham is struggling to get associated with the passing game, -1 game. Their defense is up and down too. They just had a huge COVID outbreak where Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, a good amount of their secondary was put into the COVID reserve list. And now they're being forced to trot whatever they got left against whatever is left of Seattle in a Tuesday night game. I have no idea what's going to happen in that game. I could see again, maybe Seattle pulls an upset and they just continue their winning streak. I also could see a game where the Rams just absolutely blow out Seattle and probably kill off their playoff dreams once and for all. I expect the latter to happen, but the Rams look weird to me. I can't say that they're among the best of the league yet. They're a very good team, a very solid team, but could they beat Green Bay or Tampa Bay in a road game in the playoffs right now if I were to put them head to head? I don't think so. I know the Bucks just got shut out, but for God's sake, they got beat 35-0 last year by the Saints, and then they went on to win a Super Bowl. So I wouldn't exactly count out Tom Brady yet, because this happens every year to Tom Brady. I wouldn't count that out just yet. So Rams, I think you're good enough to make a championship run. But will they? I kind of don't know. Not to mention, this year's going to be big for them, because they went all in this year at the deadline. Trading for Odell Beckham, trading for Von Miller, upgrading in the offseason, trading a pretty good price for Matt Stafford, and then trading for Sony Michel to get some help in the backfield. They've gone in all year this year on a push, and it's pretty clear. It is Super Bowl or bust for the next couple of seasons. I think anything less than at the bare minimum an NFC Championship game this year would be a massive disappointment. It's do or die time, Rams. See what you pull out. And the team I'm struggling, one of the teams I'm really struggling with to gauge, this is the last team I'll talk about, but I think it personifies how weird this year's been. It's actually two teams, and it's because they are very similar in their situations, and I have no idea what's going to happen going down the stretch. Dolphins and the Colts. Both these teams had a really rough start to the year. The Dolphins started out 1-6, and I was very much disappointed. Actually 1-7, my bad. And I was very much disappointed in Miami, losing 7 of their first 8 games, and I just thought, man, I thought this team was going to win at least 11 games. I picked them to go 11-6. I thought they were going to make a push with Buffalo and fight them for a spot all year. I thought Tua was going to take a massive leap forward with the defense and Brian Flores. Everything went wrong in that first half of the season. Tua's inconsistent, and then Tua gets hurt. Jacoby Brissett clearly isn't enough. The defense is falling apart at times. And then came the Baltimore game, where they pretty much punched Baltimore in the mouth consistently. Tua looked better, not great, but he looked better. And Dolphins win that game, only to spark what has now become a 6-game win streak. They're now back at 500 after being 1-7. They are 7-7 now, and they are back in the wild card hunt. Not to mention, they have some teams that are easily beatable, and some teams that I think they can compete against because I have no idea what they are week to week. The Dolphins are by no means dead. Tua Tagovailoa has played significantly better. I may have to talk about him later. But I'm impressed with Miami. They have found a way to get themselves into this, and I think Tua may have just cemented himself as their quarterback going forward, unless they're still tied up in the Deshaun craziness. But I think Tua is the Miami quarterback going forward because of how he's played this year, and it's much, much needed. And same goes for Indianapolis. Rough start to the year, and I was disappointed in the Colts. I thought they could probably win the South because I liked Carson Wentz with Frank Reich. And then, just like the Colts, they've caught fire. They've now won 5 straight games. They just beat who I declared the best team in football. They just beat New England. They beat New England, and they did it on the back of Jonathan Taylor, who's been a tremendous get for them in the draft. I liked him coming out of the draft. I liked him going to the Colts. And now you have Carson Wentz with Jonathan Taylor. Now, Wentz doesn't have to do too much. His passing stats were not good from that Patriot game. He completed less than 50% of his throws. But, if he can keep this up, and if the Colts can keep this streak going, with the Titans suffering some injuries and a few COVID issues as of late, maybe they might just steal the South. I'm not saying it's going to happen. The Colts could pretty much just fall apart and lose the next 3 games and go 8-9. But I kind of don't think that's going to happen. The Colts can easily win their next 3 games because they're pretty typical opponents to beat. I mean, next they got the Cardinals, the Raiders, and the Jaguars. I think they're better than the Raiders and the Jags. And hey, the Cardinals just lost to the Lions. They are by no means invincible. They could find a way to beat the Cardinals if Wentz plays well and if they just pound away with Jonathan Taylor as they've done pretty much all year. So I'm impressed with the Colts and the Dolphins. They're the 2 teams I'm positive on my fact that I can't gauge them because at least those 2 teams look bad, but now they've come roaring back. So now it's just a question of how do you play down the stretch. I think both these teams could find a way to sneak their way in. They'll need a few things to fall their way, of course, but the Colts are right now in a wildcard spot and the Dolphins are creeping in. So they'll need a few things to fall their way, but don't leave it out of Miami or Indianapolis to sneak in. Those 5 teams are prime examples of why this year has been so undeniably weird. And now we have COVID shutdowns coming in out of nowhere, and we have a doubleheader tonight on Tuesday night. We have the Eagles in Washington. That game holds playoff implications, and Washington's going to be trotting out Garrett Gilbert for their game because they don't have Heineke and they don't have Kyle Allen, so they're going to be trying out Garrett Gilbert, who we remember from the Cowboys' 1 game last year against Pittsburgh, and I don't know who the Eagles are going to be throwing out there. Jalen Hurts, Joe Flacco, who knows? And then we have the Rams and the Seahawks, and I'm going to have to make a video on the Seahawks at some point. But this year has just been really, really weird, and I kind of like it. Hey, we complained for a long time that there was no parity in football. It was just kind of Brady and the Patriots versus who the frick ever came out of the NFC. Now we're getting something different. This year has been complete chaos. The Patriots very well might just replicate 2001 all over again. They might make a run with rookie Mac Jones, and wouldn't it be something if they met Tom Brady in a Super Bowl? Wouldn't that be something? Who knows, maybe that last dance with Aaron Rodgers comes to fruition and the Packers finally get him another ring. Maybe Buffalo catches fire. Maybe the Colts. Maybe the Chiefs go for the 3rd straight time. Who the frick knows what's going to happen at this point? And I kind of like that. I think New England's number 1 in the league right now, but that could change by the end of the year. I want to do a power rankings at some point, but it changes so often. This race is far from over. The Packers are the only team right now to have clinched a playoff spot, and that's because they won their division. That's it. Yes, believe it or not, the Rams and the Bucks have yet to clinch the West and the South or a playoff spot at this point. I have no idea how that's possible. The East is up for grabs, the West, the North, the South, and the AFC. This year is going to shape out like complete and total tire fire at this point. That's why I'm calling this thing a roller coaster on fire. You ever seen those extreme roller coasters like out of New Zealand or Australia? That's what this year feels like. 1,000 different twists and turns, except this one's on fire, and you're not quite burning up from it, but it makes the roller coaster change tracks at the last second. Unlike a real life roller coaster, this thing changes tracks whenever it feels like. I know is we are in for quite a wild finish, and I have no idea what this is going to hold, but at least the holidays are here. We can have some sense of normalcy. That's why I'm drinking a rum and coke, because it's a nice, simple drink, and it's easy to understand, unlike this football season. I, for one, enjoyed kind of the chaos. It's kind of fun to see what happens from week to week. So anyways, that's it for me, guys. And please be sure to enjoy the holidays with your family. I'm going to take a little break for Christmas. Then I'll be back talking about the college football playoff. I think there's something to talk about with what's happened this year. And then I want to talk about the NBA and the NHL. I'm talking about power rankings midway through the season. This is a weird time for sports, but we have it anyway. Anyways, that's it for me. Please, go enjoy yourselves. Have a fun holiday season. Merry Christmas. And I'll see you guys next week.